What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and it's Monday, which means it's time to talk through my top 10 fantasy football lessons learned and takeaways from Week 10, where we break down the usage, stats, trends, everything you need to know so you don't have to scroll through box scores for hours from Week 10 so we can move forward and win our fantasy football championships. As always, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and the first thing we have here is the rookie receiver report. Now, of course, the rookie receiver report is sponsored by Underdog. Make sure you check them out. I have a promo code, RON. You can use that will match your first deposit up to $1,000. You can go on there, get in the pick'em lobby, go higher or lower. You get a free pick'em whenever you are a new customer sign up. Today's is Stafford in the Monday Night Football game. And I'll do a little bit of flexing myself. Of course, you have the drafts, you have football drafts, you have the higher lowers on pick'em. I fancy myself a little bit of a ball knower. All right, now this isn't anything crazy. This isn't actually that big of a flex, but we turned $5 into $1,500 on Saturday night. I was just messing around. These are very fun. $5 to enter, like $8,000 up top. We get 7th place, and I really just draft off vibes, right? I watch a lot of college basketball, so Evan Mobley over at USC was fun. Colin Saxon at Alabama. Ayo Dosunmu over at Illinois when he used to have Kofi Coburn. Lots of I kind of just pick the guys that I like, and then we just see what happens. And I'm telling you guys, the daily ones are fun. Of course, we draft the ones in the offseason, right, where we draft Best Ball Mania, and all those are fun, but you're locking up that money for 6 months on that payout. $5, and you get to know that night if you won or not. So pretty fun. Make sure you check it out. Use promo code RON. They'll match your first deposit up to $1,000. Who knows? Maybe I'll dabble in some NBA fantasy. But like I said, I don't even really know how the scoring works. I just pick the players that I like and get lucky sometimes. Now, I will be honest, I'm a little bit sick. I did just pause it to cough. We'll see how this goes. I don't know if I'll have time to edit this. We'll see. But we're going to try and take it easy. I'm going to try and get this not to be an hour. We'll see how this goes. But the rookie receiver report here, of course, you have the route percentages. Are these guys getting on the field? Targets per out run, are they getting volume? Yards per out run, are they getting efficiency? First downs per out run, are they actually moving the chains? PFF grade, and then how much they change in PFF grade week to week. Now, of course, we start with Malik Neighbors. Now, Brock Bowers up top, he was on bye. Malik Neighbors here, it's really tough. This is somebody getting held back by quarterback play. I thought maybe he would be too good for it to matter like it was earlier in the season. The Andrew Thomas injury seems to have really impacted things here, as you can see from Josh Norris. Whereas over his last 4 games, it's just been a lot of volume and not really paying off on that volume, which is going to be tough. That takes him from, that was kind of the concern preseason, that the talent's there. He's such a good football player. But if he's not going to score the touchdowns, then he kind of becomes like a Deontay Johnson type volume, PPR guy, some explosive plays. But if the touchdowns aren't going to be there, being a high-end fantasy option is tough. But I still do love him long term. After that, we have Marvin Harrison Jr. He, of course, looks really good against my Jets. Ahmad Gardner is a bum. Just had to get that out there. Marvin Harrison Jr., 5 catches, 54 yards, a touchdown. He looks great. He's closing the gap on Neighbors. He gains on him with PFF grade. If you can get to 80-plus PFF grade, 2+ yards per out run, and like 10% plus first downs per out run by the end of this year, he's going to be in really, really good company. Then we'll talk about Brian Thomas Jr. I know that he's been really tough to watch here, tough to even put in your lineups, right? He's been hurting me as well. He's like my most owned player in redraft, so the Trevor Lawrence injury is brutal. It actually seems like Trevor Lawrence, it seems like one of those things where he can try and play through the shoulder injury, or he can take surgery and kind of play it safe, and it seems like he's at a spot with the organization where he might just play it safe, right? Doug Peterson and these guys and this team, it's just kind of all crumbling here. So that would be really bad for Brian Thomas. We'll talk later about what Mac Jones means to this offense, but had an injury here. I think that's still affecting him. And then also Mac Jones at quarterback isn't going to help. So he has taken a bit of a hit here the last 2 weeks, but still feel really good about him as a dynasty, like top 12 wide receiver moving forward. He does still lead this class in yards per out run. Then we have Ladd McConkey. This one is tough because the Chargers passing offense has actually been good, but it hasn't really trickled down to Ladd McConkey because he's taking on he's the only guy the pass defense actually cares about, Ladd McConkey. You can see here Quinn Johnson scores a touchdown because Ladd McConkey has 3 guys on him on this red zone play. So that's not going to work. But in terms of per routes, 20% plus targets per out run, 2 plus yards per out run, 10% plus first downs per out run. I love him in Dynasty, and because Herbert's been throwing the ball more here and actually playing quarterback, I do think that we're going to see some better days ahead for Ladd McConkey. It just seems like I keep coming to you guys saying that same thing. Then we have Rome Odunze. This one's tough. Like, you can definitely look at Rome Odunze. He's like here. He's pretty brutal right now in terms of like everything per route. PFF grade, it all sucks, but at least like 1.29. We'll get to another guy in a little bit here, or actually after this, is that Xavier Worthy is in like this dead zone. If you get to under 1 yards per out run, you can kind of be forgotten about. 1.29 in the situation that he's in is actually, I wouldn't call it impressive, but he's not dead is what I would say. And he's far from dead is really what I would call it. You just can't expect good efficiency per route metrics when your offense is the worst NFL offense in EPA per play and success rate since their bye week. 15, 9, 3 points scored in those 3 games. Shout out to Matthew Betts. Just not going to cut it. I still think that we really don't know who Rome Odunze is as a pro. He has hit 6 or more targets in 4 of his last 5, so he's commanding volume. I still do believe in Rome Odunze long term, especially with the kind of prospect that he was. So I'm not waving the white flag on him just yet, but somebody I am waving the white flag on is Xavier Worthy. I think it's pretty much done here. And I hinted at this after their primetime game last week. It was Chiefs versus Bucks. And I got a lot of pushback in their replies of, oh, it's still so early. It's still so early. It's like, no, man. Like we're 10 games in. We're 10 games in. That is a lot of data here. A lot of routes for Xavier Worthy. And he had everything break his way. He had Marquise Brown injury. He had Rashee Rice injury. Before DeAndre Hopkins has traded there, he has like 4 or so weeks of just Xavier Worthy. It is just a Xavier Worthy show. And he couldn't perform. So then they traded for DeAndre Hopkins. Since DeAndre Hopkins has gotten there, it's lowered his yards per out run and everything even lower. But at a certain point, you can't have a 0.89 yards per out run. We usually sort this by PFF grade. We sort this by yards per out run. He is below Carolina Panthers tight end JT Sanders. And on top of like Xavier Worthy, of course, the Rashee Rice injury, the Marquise Brown injury, he gets first round draft capital attached to Patrick Mahomes. It's on a silver platter. I'm not asking him to be a world beater. He just needs to be, 1.2. He just needs to be in this range, which is where he was early in the season. He's now not. He's almost like regressing in a way. His PFF grade took a -6 this week, worst of the week. It's done. I know that Mahomes has overthrown him on some deep balls, but you can't live on just deep balls. He's not doing anything, before the 20-yard mark. Can he just play receiver? Can he beat press coverage? Can he just, it's all bubble screens, reverses, and go balls. So we're talking like it's like a bad version of Jameson Williams. And even Jameson Williams, I mean, you saw him last night. He had like this dig where he comes over. He gets like sort of tabletop by the dude behind him, dude in front of him. It's just a long road for Xavier Worthy, and I don't think that he's ever going to return value on the first-round pick you spent on him in Dynasty or the top 8-round pick that you spent on him in redraft. It sucks. I was big on Xavier Worthy this year, but it was also under the pretense of I also like Rashee Rice a lot. Rashee Rice, of course, is the one that would have hit if he didn't get his ACL torn by the quarterback. But yeah, it's time to get real about Xavier Worthy, and I don't think it's going to work out for him long term. And I will say this, everyone is jumping. This is what probably bothers me the most, is everyone's jumping to, well, we should have known. Sets the combine record. These small speedsters don't work out, right? He's the next John Ross. Well, here's the thing, man. If you want to actually play that game, dude, like Xavier Worthy's production was much better than John Ross as a college player. John Ross also had like a ACL tear. I'm pulling these up now just because I really do want to put this on the screen for you guys, because what really bothers me is that sometimes there's not something to be taken away from a prospect not hitting. Xavier Worthy might have had a 75% chance of hitting, and he didn't. The 25% chance happened. Like, there is no bulletproof prospect. Sammy Watkins is one of the cleanest prospects I have ever seen in my database. His freshman year would blow out Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams right now. He had like 1,200 all-purpose yards as a true freshman at Clemson with like DeAndre Hopkins there. Or I'm not sure if Hopkins was there yet, but it was a room full of dudes. And then here's the John Ross stats here. But what I'm saying about like Sammy Watkins, perfect prototype receiver, and of course, OBJ is better than him in that class. I think that this is the right class. Like Mike Evans is better than him in that class. Devontae Adams, all these guys. You can have the best prospect profile of all time, and sometimes it doesn't work out. And that's just kind of the deal you make here. Now, of course, he tears his ACL, John Ross, up to 2014. These are his stats, right? He doesn't hit 1,000+ yards until he's a senior at Washington. Instead, Xavier Worthy here hits 981 and 12, down year sophomore year, and then his final year just as a junior next to A.D. Mitchell, J.T. Sanders, etc., 75, 1,005, right? So, like, he had much better production. He had much better excuses as to why maybe he didn't have like a 1,500-yard year. It's because he had good players next to him the entire time, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. I would be very hesitant to be like, well, I'm never trusting a small speedster again, because then you are cutting off from your vocabulary Deshaun Jackson, Tank Dell, Devontae Smith, Zay Flowers is another one of these guys like sub 180 pounds who run fast. These guys work out. It's just Xavier Worthy didn't, and that's really all you can say. Then we can move on to Ricky Pearsall here. I didn't mean to like rant there or anything. Ricky Pearsall averaging 5 targets per game over his first 3 career games, of course, off the bullet wound. 6 targets, 4 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown this week. His yards per run in his first 3 games, 0.68, 1.58, 2.43 this week. So he's trending up, which is really nice to see. He's improving his PFF grade. His per route numbers look decent. Only 70% of the routes here. You'd like that to be a little bit more, but he's on the 49ers, so I think that the scoring opportunities and the yardage on this offense should make up for that. But that's fun. He gives you that rookie late season upside, and he's on a good offense. So that's somebody in redraft who is a flex play moving forward with a lot of upside down the stretch. Then we have Jermaine Burton. Jermaine Burton, finally gets out of his own way, gets onto the field, and what does he do with it? 5 targets for 1 catch and 11 yards. I don't know. He's second worst PFF grade change on the week. I don't think he played well enough to justify that amount of routes. We'll see. That was kind of his chance, and he sort of blew it in a must-win game. Then we have the Panthers, of course. Jalen Coker back up to 93% of the routes. Love to see that. He actually had 8 targets in this game. 93% of the routes, all good. The issue is that he only turned that into 3 catches for 41 yards. So a little bit of a bummer. PFF grade takes a hit, but I still love Jalen Coker. Leggett, more of the same. I think he had like 40 receiving yards. He just didn't score a touchdown this week. J.T. Sanders scored a touchdown. I would still love to see. I mean, these are good numbers for tight ends. I know that these are all red, but for a rookie tight end, these are fine. Unless your name is Brock Bowers. I want to see what J.T. Sanders does in a game where Tommy Tremble is active, because that's kind of what it's been. When Tommy Tremble is hurt, J.T. Sanders looks good, and then Tommy Tremble is healthy, and J.T. Sanders does nothing. So I'll be very curious on that. We can talk about the Broncos receivers as well. Devon Bailey has completely jumped Troy Franklin for wide receiver 2 here, and like low Jordan Humphrey, whatever. 82% of the routes, improved his PFF grade to get up above 70. He is out here, 4 catches, 39 yards, a touchdown. The issue is I don't know if this passing game will have enough to go around outside of Sutton with Bo Nix moving forward, and then he's also like a 25-year-old rookie, so nothing really to say here in Dynasty. In redraft, he's like a really deep league kind of ad, but he just has to be mentioned here. Troy Franklin, improves his PFF grade by 1. He's just not been very good. Devon Bailey has now leaped over him. Not great for Troy Franklin. Then you have Theo Johnson, 6 targets in back-to-back games, 83% of the routes this week. He's a full-time tight end. He's a rookie. I mean, not really much to expect there. He did increase his PFF grade by a good margin. And then we saved A.D. Mitchell for last year because I did want to just sort of lead this into some Colts talk. But A.D. Mitchell, man, this is why he has been in every single one of my Patreon fab articles of just keep holding on, keep holding out for hope. We finally get the Pittman injury. I got to be honest, fellas. It seemed like it was going to be 1 week. I don't know. It could be multiple weeks. A.D. Mitchell looked really good. He led all Colts receivers in first downs, which I really liked. He ran more routes than Josh Downs. He was the primary, or not primary, him and Pierce, perimeter guys in those run-heavy sets they like the 12 and 13 personnel. So they had full trust in him. His full per-route metrics are now kind of getting nursed back to full health here, where the yards per run is rebounded. First downs per run is rebounded. PFF grade a little bit in the right direction. Targets per run, second behind only Malik Neighbors in this class. The guy gets open, and I will bet on that every time, and I'll say that right now. In all formats, I would prefer A.D. Mitchell to Xavier Worthy. I don't know if that's controversial, but it's where I am at this point. He had 6 catches, 71 yards. Nothing too crazy, but that's still fine. For a rookie receiver, first time that he actually, gets the call, come up, be a real receiver in the NFL, he pays off, leads the room in first downs, which is really huge just for the team trusting him. And we can kind of get into our second takeaway. Our first takeaway was the rookie receiver report. Second takeaway here will be the Colts, right? The Colts, no Mike Pittman. What does that look like? And here are the snap counts from yesterday. Now, this is just what it's going to look like for Josh Downs. He's a tiny slot receiver, and the Colts, for whatever reason right now, I'm trying to think. The two defenses they've played so far, the Bills, the Vikings, maybe it's just to protect Flacco a little more is the heavy, kind of like jumbo 12 personnel, 13 personnel stuff. But that's going to end up Josh Downs having 28 routes run out of 39, which is low, but of course still 35% targets per out run. I'm trying to say that, put this in a way of like, don't panic when you see Josh Downs third on this list. It's just what it is, but he's still going to lead the receiver room in targets. 10 targets will play. He ends up with 7 catches, 72 yards, drops a touchdown, sadly. It could have been an even bigger day. But everyone got home with Flacco as quarterback, and that's something I will concede even as a Richardson boy, that when Flacco's in here, it's better for all the pass catchers, especially when Pittman's not in there either. Pittman is brutal. There's something that the film guys keep saying when Pittman plays that it's just bad. His back is all jacked up. I hope that he stays out for as long as like his kind of, at this point, that his ego will let him. Because the rest of this, like, this is good. Like, there's Colts fans saying like this is probably the best the receiver room has looked all year. Alec Pierce on an 18-yard 8-out, which is perfect. That's like his archetype. 4 catches, 81 yards, a touchdown. Of course, Downs gets 7 catches, 72 yards. Mitchell gets his. So everyone got theirs. Flacco in like a weird garbage time got 272 yards, 2 touchdowns, kind of like a Jameis Winston stat line with the 3 picks and a lost fumble. And then I did get a question that was, someone was like, can you touch on Jonathan Taylor? Jonathan Taylor's been fine. He gives you 21 carries, 4 targets. What's that? 25 opportunities. He had his 3rd highest snap share of the year at 84%. His highest rush attempt share of the year at 95%. 21 carries. The only other carry went to Ashton Duel in there. It says he didn't get the touchdown. Tyler Goodson came in as like a goal line, kind of like fake the handoff and then leak out kind of touchdown. That's going to happen, but JT usage, he is easily a top 12 running back rest of season. Then we can kind of move on to the Russ effect, man. Russell Wilson, dude. I mean, I would have never thought that this was going to happen here. This is, again, 3 games for Russ, 6 games for Justin Fields. Russ has 6 touchdowns to Fields 5. Per game, that's 2 touchdowns per game to Fields, like less than 1 per game. 245 passing yards per game to Fields 184. So the environment's just so much better, and that's why we're seeing much better box scores for especially George Pickens. This is from Dwayne McFarland here. Not just the box scores, but the quality of targets. His ADOT's going up from 12.6 to 16.6. End zone targets, 0.5 to 1.7. Air yards going up. Fantasy points, 10.1 to 18. That's the big one that you and me care about. And you can see here, Pickens on the year, 2.62 yards per run, which is elite. And Pickens is one guy that I wish I had more. I have him on plenty of best ball, but I wish I had him on more redraft teams, because this is what we were saying. Like, if there's going to be a year 3 breakout not named, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Chris Olave, to me it was clearly Pickens. 3.21 yards per hour with Russell Wilson at quarterback, like Jacob Gibbs says here, that's Nico Collins territory. Like, he is on, put the memes aside. I don't know. He is just out of his mind sometimes. He had like the bubble screen where he's like, hold on to the guy's face mask. There's the pick downfield, and he like is like eating the face mask of the corner. But in terms of playing receiver and being very efficient, he's really good. He is the wide receiver 6 with 18 points per game since Russell Wilson's debut. Before that, he was like outside the top 36 in points per game. Now, we can also talk about Mike Williams' debut. There's not really much to talk about. He did, of course, he gets traded from the Jets. And I don't know, it's tough to really say, because he runs 7 routes, and on his one target, it's like a game-sealing touchdown, like classic Mike Williams fashion. But until he runs, until he eats into that Calvin Austin, Van Jefferson range of like 20-plus routes run, there's not much to be said here. But there is upside here for him to be like a touchdown-dependent flex down the line. And then also a fine day for Freiermuth. Like, this is just what Russell Wilson's going to do for your passing offense, which is kind of crazy to say just because he wasn't this good with the Broncos. Freiermuth also gets home. He runs about 70% of the targets, right? 20 plus what we're looking for there out of 33 routes run, and he gets a receiving touchdown. So, the pass catchers on the Steelers are eating good. Now, our 4th takeaway here is going to be the Jaguars with Mac Jones, and this one is tough. Now, I will say the biggest thing, I wouldn't completely sound the alarms just yet. It's not great. But I feel better about a Mac Jones than I do like a Cooper Rush, we'll talk about in a little bit, right? I do feel like Mac Jones has at least shown capable quarterbacking. This Vikings defense is no joke. They are the best in the NFL in terms of EPA per play allowed, success rate allowed, all of that. They are really, really good. Or I guess Philadelphia is better in success rate allowed, but They are a really, really strong defense. If you guys don't remember, they killed what they gave Brock Purdy and the Niners a lot of issues. They gave Stroud a lot of issues. Like, they have just been a really, really good defense. So, yes, Mac Jones, really brutal, but I did want to provide that context. He does give you 111 passing yards, 5 yards per attempt, 2 picks. I mean, 12.8 QBR. That is not winning football. And then not really much better on the ground, 56 rushing yards on the ground versus the best defense in football. So, I find it hard to have many takeaways besides Ingram looks to be kind of like Mac Jones' favorite target at this point. That would make sense. ETN, full control as a lead back, 11 carries to Tank Bigsby's 2. And then also big downgrade from Brian Thomas because now the quarterback is just not the one who was giving him, fringe wide receiver 1 production. So hate to see it, but the one bright spot I will mention for the Jags, 57.1% neutral pass rate, 7th highest on the week. So at least maybe we'll get some pass-heavy games. Again, I do think especially the Vikings are just a really tough defense. I want to give it one more week before I'd say this passing offense is dead. I still think, of course, it's going to be bottom 10, but I think it's going to maybe be serviceable. We shall see. And then we have the Vikings on the other side of this game. Just wanted to give you guys a Hawkinson update. This is from the Fantasy Life Utilization Report. Make sure you check them out. Hawkinson is back. He's a top 6 guy moving forward. 70% plus of the routes, 26% target share. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. 15.2 PPR points on 8 catches for 72 yards. Then we have the big story of the day is the Broncos backfield shakeup. This is our 5th takeaway here that Sean Payton just kind of out of nowhere had decided, it's Audric Estime's day. So Estime had 26 snaps, led the backfield, 7 routes, just behind Javonte, 14 opportunities, led the entire backfield. So Jill McLaughlin, you can cut him. All right, 7 snaps is not going to cut it. Javonte now gets downgraded to a guy you can't even start until we see him kind of turn the tides back. And then Estime, probably the number 1 waiver wire ad on the week. Now, I will say, Estime didn't really have that great of a day. He had 14 carries, 53 yards, 3.8 yards per carry. So it's not like he looked like an absolute stud. It's just that he got all the volume this week. We'll see. Sean Payton's one of those coaches. I will take his word for it that Estime is the lead back moving forward based on this usage. But I just kind of want to temper expectations. I wouldn't get super, super crazy again. He didn't look that great on those carries, and Sean Payton's also Sean Payton. But this is huge. He is probably the number 1 running back on the waiver wire show tomorrow. And then I'll also say a little note on Courtland Sutton. Don't look now. He's averaging 10 targets per game over his last 3. He's averaging 19.8 points per game over that span, with the 4th most points among wide receivers over that span. And that was wide receiver 30-ish over the entire season in points per game, and that's fine for where you drafted him. And the guy, right, I just said he's 4th. The top 4 receivers in terms of PPR points scored over the last 3 weeks is Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, number 3, Sutton, number 3 is Calvin Ridley. Takeaway number 6, Calvin Ridley, I owe you an apology. I hopped up on JJ Zacharyason's podcast. Shout out to JJ Zacharyson. He asked me about the DeAndre Hopkins trade. What does this mean for Ridley? And I was like, I'm not all that interested. I don't know that he's all that good. And he has crushed me ever since. He is averaging 20.1 points per game since then. And it's weird because before Hopkins got traded, he had back-to-back games of 8+ targets. Then Hopkins gets traded. The raw target totals haven't really gone up, but the target share has, where he has now averaged 36% target share per game without DeAndre Hopkins. That number was 21% with him. Ridley's 20.1 PPR points per game without Hopkins, as opposed to 7.5 with him. So this does make a massive difference, and he's a back-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 until further notice because of it, and he did it with Rudolph, he did it with Levis this past week. Calvin Ridley, like I said, I owe him an apology. He looks good moving forward without Hopkins. Then the backfield, not good for Pollard at all. In this game, we had a bit of a split, right? This was the first game back for Tyjae Spears in a while. And after a 31-touch game for Pollard last week, he goes down to 53% of the snaps from 85%. And it's not a clean 50-50, but damn near, right? 53% to 47%. 13 touches for Pollard to 10 for Spears. So Pollard gets a nice downgrade there as well, from pretty much a firm RB2 to now a back-end RB2. And same thing on the other side for the Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins split, where we saw Gus Edwards for the first time this year look more efficient than J.K. Dobbins, which is bad. 10 carries for Gus Edwards. He was more efficient than Dobbins. That's not great. 10 touches for Gus Edwards to Dobbins 18. That's still very good for Dobbins. The issue is that Haskins is the one who scored the touchdown, Hassan Haskins. So it was a two-way split with the third guy vulturing a touchdown, making nobody really startable. 67% of the snaps for Dobbins, 25% for Gus Edwards. It's going to tilt more towards Gus as we go here, assuming that Gus keeps up that efficiency. So not good for Dobbins. He had a high floor, was a firm RB2. He's now a fringe RB2 with a low floor because we don't really know what his touch floor will look like, but I do think the efficiency will bounce back. And I just want to touch, I keep talking about Herbert, man. I'm just so impressed from like a fantasy perspective, from a real life perspective. He has 8 career games of 30 or more rushing yards. 2 of those 8 games have come in the last 3 weeks, 49 yards in week 8, 32 yards in week 10, which he also had a rushing touchdown in this game. Are we going to shift to Konami Herbert? And I asked that because something that I always harp on, longtime subscribers of the channel will see this screenshot and know what I'm on about, but rushing upside, and this is just kind of a lesson across the board, whether that means, future draft classes, whatever, rushing is a tendency stat, not an ability stat. Justin Herbert, I truly do believe if he wanted to tomorrow, could rush for 700 rushing yards and 5 rushing touchdowns. I do. When you look at the numbers here, him versus Josh Allen, he is 6'6", 236 pounds, 4'6", 840, man. 4'6", 840 is nuts. 35.5-inch vertical, 10-foot broad jump. He's more explosive. He's faster in a straight line than Josh Allen. Like, he was built in a lab, Justin Herbert, and really whatever he wants to do in terms of his play style, he can do. He's 20-plus points per game over his last 3 games. He is all the way back, and if he decides to start rushing this year, look out. Now, 7th takeaway, the Cowboys without Dak. No bueno. No bueno. I mean, God. This is ugly to look at, man. We have 45 passing yards for Rush, 21 for Lance, a pick for Lance, both of them like 15 apiece in QBR. This one, the Eagles' defense is good, so maybe things get better, but I really doubt it. Again, like, I do feel better about a Mac Jones than I do about a Cooper Rush or a Trey Lance. We'll see. Once upon a time, we all loved Trey Lance in fantasy football. But this is just bad, man. You at least on a volume basis, 15 touches for Rico Dowdle, good. The offense can't move the ball. CeeDee Lamb, 35% target share, 10 targets. Could have caught a touchdown, but dropped it in the sun. Just 21 yards on 6 catches. Bad. So CeeDee Lamb's now like a back-end wide receiver 2. Rico Dowdle is like a high-end RB3. Everything else here, like Jake Ferguson, huge downgrade, which sucks because he looked like he was going to have a monster season at one point in time. Just downgrades all around. You can't move the ball with this type of quarterback play, and it's just going to be very frustrating for anyone that has Cowboys in Dynasty. Now, our 8th takeaway is that McCaffrey is back. McCaffrey is back. He plays 56 of 64 snaps here. Shout out to Adam Levitan. He's out there out wide in the slot. He's running a ton of routes. He has 7 targets on the day for a 19% target share, and that's the funny part. He was just warming up. He didn't score a touchdown. Just 13 carries for 39 yards, not good, but 7 targets, 6 catches, 68 yards. This was his floor, 16.7 PPR points this week. To me, he's like a top 6 guy rest of season. If you have him, you should be rejoicing. Now, the rest of the team. Let's talk about the 49ers here. Jawan Jennings, if you picked him up a few weeks ago when the Ayuk injury happened, good on you, man. He looks like he's going to be a high-end wide receiver 3 moving forward. He gives you 11 opportunities. I think he scored a touchdown on one of them. Let me see if I can pull up the game log here. But Jawan Jennings, man, 11 targets. Looks like the best pure receiver on this team. 7 catches, 93 yards, no touchdown. 16.3 PPR points in this game. He led the receiver room in routes run and targets. He's a guy. Then you have Deebo. I want to talk about Deebo because I know a lot of people are getting a bit panicked on Deebo. I'm trying to put this in the correct way. The issue with Deebo right now is that he's not as efficient. Like, that's kind of the issue with Deebo every single year, is he's never going to have, 11 targets like Jawan Jennings. But he got 9 touches in this game. He had 3 carries, 6 targets. He's just not the efficient Deebo that he was in 2021. But the pendulum can always swing for a late season surge here. He's getting the volume you want. He's had 12 plus PPR points the last 2 weeks. The issue is that you drafted him to get like 18 plus. So it's tough. I keep saying that I think that things are going to come back for him. I think that they will. But he's probably now, instead of being like a high-end wide receiver 2 rest of season, or like even a fringe wide receiver 1, probably more like a wide receiver 2, back-end wide receiver 2 rest of season. We'll kind of see how things go there. And then Ricky Pearsall, we talked about him earlier. Like, to me, flex play moving forward with the upside for more than that, because we've seen rookie receivers. Like, if there was going to be a guy this year that's not, one of the obvious ones to be this year's Jaden Reed, Zay Flowers, Amon-Ra St. Brown his rookie year, Christian Watson his rookie year, where they just go crazy the last 5 or 6 weeks. My vote would maybe be Ricky Pearsall right now. I think Ricky Pearsall and A.D. Mitchell are the two, dark horse ones for me. Then we have the 9th takeaway. Is Bijan 101? And I say this, look, all praise to Derrick Henry, all praise to Saquon Barkley. I feel like I have to say that every time that I say anything about a running back on this channel. Those are 2 huge misses for us. So anytime I pump up any other running back, it's maybe the RB1 or whatever, I always have to hear it from them. Of course, big miss by us on this channel. But we said in the offseason we're looking for a legendary running back season. Derrick Henry's the RB1 right now at 21.6 points per game. That's not quite legendary. We are looking for, it's really just been how lackluster the receivers have been, but we will talk in a little bit about the Thursday night game that Jamar Chase is fighting back. He now leads all position players, running backs and receivers, in points per game in terms of PPR. But 21.6 for Henry isn't truly legendary. We're looking for, 23 plus is really the ideal. McCaffrey was at 24.5 points per game. I know that you guys sometimes want me to chime in on well, who do you think legendary running back's going to be this year? Right now, it's kind of up in the air. So I do think that Derrick Henry and Saquon are kind of capped out at that high, just shy of 22, which is still fine. Most years that could be your RB1 overall, and that could still be a huge league winner. But when we talk about a true legendary season, I do think Bijan's tracking for it right now. Let's pull up the leaderboard right now for points per game. Can I find it? Yes. All right. So let's pull this up. This is the fantasy football leaders in points per game. You have, of course, Derrick Henry at 21.6, then Mixon at 20.8. You have 4 above 20, which is nice. But none of them are really pulling ahead here. If you look at 23, it was McCaffrey in a landslide at 24.5, and then it was Kyron at 21.3, which is kind of on pace with what Derrick Henry's doing. I will say running back has fought back this year that there's so, there's 4 or 5 20-plus point per game guys right now. Last year it was just Kyron and McCaffrey. Now, we look at 24, we have a bunch of guys up top, but we don't have a true, one kind of separating right now. I guess Derrick Henry, but he's kind of been on a small skid the last 3 weeks. To me, it would be Bijan, who's now kind of surging forward since week 6. We just go to week 6. This is, I guess you could call it a legendary stretch for him. And kind of sort of for Devon Achane. So, I'm going to get possibly killed for this, but if I was to give a legendary running back short list right now, I would include, of course, the guys who are already up top. It would be Henry, Mixon, Kamara, Saquon. All of them are already above 20 plus, but if someone was to surge ahead and we look back after week 18 and we say, wow, that guy killed it, had 23 plus points per game and was the legendary running back season, it would be Bijan. My candidates would be Bijan, McCaffrey, and Devon Achane, if not the 4 guys already in 20 plus points per game. So that's still a 7-man race. I'll say straight up, we're not going to talk about the Jets here. Brees, you can toss out of there. They are insistent on not running the ball inside of the red zone, despite Brees having 5+ yards per carry. Kenneth Walker, you could maybe toss out there, but he's been a little bit down, probably over his last 3 games. Now, moving on from that, I'm sure that will go very well in the comment section. We have the Thursday night game. I just wanted to talk about it. Now, I'm about to say something pretty crazy here. And this isn't to say that Jamar Chase is the greatest of all time or he's better than the players on this list. It's just that what he's doing is very freaky. And I am somebody who I don't value consistency in fantasy football. A lot of times it's just kind of fake Fugazi nonsense. I just want the fantasy points, right? Because points 4 is your tiebreaker. And most matchups in fantasy aren't decided by 10 or 20 or under 10 points. Usually they're blowouts. And when you get a guy like Jamar Chase on Thursday night, 55 PPR points, you probably won that week. So that's massive. And when we talk about in the offseason about wins above replacement and all that, that's a huge swing. That's a 1, in that category for you. Now, Jamar Chase, to me, second best wide receiver in the NFL behind Jefferson. Jefferson's in a tier of his own. Jamar Chase probably in a tier with some other guys. You want to put Lamb in there. You want to put A.J. Brown in there. Probably missing somebody in my head right now that I really should be bringing up. But in terms of single game upside, man, I don't know. Jamar Chase might be the GOAT in terms of single game upside. If you just had one slate for the rest of your life, 1 week for the rest of your life, you needed somebody, Hail Mary of 50 plus PPR points, right? You're looking forward to Monday Night Football. You're down 50. The one guy I'd want in my lineup is Jamar Chase, man. We look here. There have only been 3 players with 2 or more 50-plus PPR point games. Marshall Faulk had 2 in 176 games played. Jerry Rice had 2 in 303 games played. Ja'Marr Chase leads all of the history books with 3 in just 55 games played. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that he's better than Jerry Rice. He's absolutely not. But he is just he is an alien. I've never seen anything like this. Like, we're going to look back on Ja'Marr Chase, like, very similar to how we looked back, like, if he's not a Hall of Fame talent if he doesn't ascend to those heights, we will look back on him similar to how we look back on Jamal Charles and Chris Johnson as just, like, fantasy Hall of Fame anomalies. That is nuts. I also had a stat down here, which is just, it's a unfair framing of this stat, which is, of course, what you sometimes do, but 350-plus point PPR games is better than Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, and Calvin Johnson all had combined. So just in terms of, like, single game upside, nuts. He now sits as the wide receiver 1 in points per game with 22.5 at the top of all positions of players. Now, sadly, I did want to say, too, you guys were with me in these redraft streams, and, like, every time we would pray for it, man. We're sitting there at the 111, right? This is when the contract stuff was happening, late August, early September. There was a lot of panic. And I imagine, let me know in the comments, if you were somebody out there that got lucked into, like, let's say you pulled the 111 and the Ja'Marr Chase contract stuff happened. People were taking, A.J. Brown over him. They were taking Garrett Wilson over him. And you got a Ja'Marr Chase gift at 111. Let me know if you did and how your season is going with that. That was something we could never get to fall to us. Every time I'd be like, man, please let Ja'Marr Chase fall. Please let Ja'Marr Chase fall. And we could never get it to happen. But we have seen, I would get like the 103 and we would see him fall to like the 201 or like, the 111. There was a small gap, especially like during, the biggest draft weekend of the year. There was a small gap. People were like coming into live streams like, Ron, like, are we done with Ja'Marr Chase? Like, I even myself put him behind Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jefferson, which I don't really feel bad about, but just moving him to the back of that wide receiver tier. And he has just been an absolute monster since then. Then we have Gesicki. He didn't come through on this game, but JJ Zachariason points it out here with Eric All out because of the ACL tear. Of course, Tanner Hudson actually looked good in this game, but Gesicki, his target shares have still been great over his last 3, and he had a season-high 75% route participation rate. It continues to be a trend. I know that he wasn't good this week, but any game that Teagan misses, Gesicki is a top 10 tight end at worst. Then we had the Khalil Herbert and Keaton Mitchell debuts. Khalil Herbert comes in, 3% of the snaps, and he fumbles a handoff. And now they're looking at Leonard Fournette. So, not good. Not good for Khalil Herbert. I do think that better days are to come. Chase Brown has 20-plus PPR points in his last 2 games without Zach Moss, so he's, on a skyrocket ship. I don't know. We'll see what happens to Khalil Herbert, but if Leonard Fournette comes in and makes it a 3-way split, I think Chase Brown's secure, but that probably really drowns out Khalil Herbert. And then Keaton Mitchell had just 2% of the snaps, so there's nothing really to be said there. And then I will say, Deontay Johnson check-in. He ran 27% of the routes in his first game as a Raven, down to 8% of the routes in this game. Now, a reasonable person would say, well, it was a short week. Maybe they didn't prepare him. Really important divisional game versus the Bengals. But no, he goes on Twitter, says something stupid. The Ravens only invested in like a 5th-round pick swap in this guy. They owe him nothing. So that's like, and when we're talking about like rest of season, I don't know that he's ever even going to hit like 80% plus of the routes and be somebody you start in fantasy football rest of the season. So I'm not really telling you to drop him, but Deontay's looking cooked. And I will give praise to Mike Tomlin here real quick that time and time again, we see these wide receivers leave the Steelers. They were, very well kept and maintained on the Steelers. They leave and they are insane drama queens a lot of the time. So what I'm trying to say, I think Mike Tomlin deserves more flowers. As a Jets fan who sits here, have made the playoffs since I was in elementary school, I did see the Steelers fans kind of get that sentiment last year of fire this guy. I'm done going just over 500, right? He's just going to give us to another 9-8 season. Sometimes that's good, man. He builds a culture, and I sometimes disagree with him in terms of like 4th down decision making. I think he sometimes can struggle with that, but in terms of like a locker room and establishing this winning culture, right? The Jets right now, and this is a rant at the end of the video that none of you guys have to watch. I get complaints all the time in the top end of the video. It's at the end here, so no one's actually going to get to this point. But Tomlin deserves his flowers because you have the Jets, Sauce Gardner today tweeting about how him getting tossed by Trey McBride isn't a big deal and the whole organization's falling apart. Having that stability and that winning culture is absolutely huge. And there is some like baseball, moneyball type vibes to it of like, just keep making it and you'll figure it out. They've kind of found something at quarterback here. They seem like a legit player in the AFC. Like I think you can actually probably put them over the Texans as like the 4th best team in the AFC right now. So I don't know, man. I would just say the grass always looks greener, but I promise it is not. You do not want to go through like a real rebuild and completely strip everything down. Now, that's all I'm going to say on that. Regardless, appreciate you guys watching. I don't know. I don't know if I sound bad on the mic. I'm getting better, though. I put out a message on Saturday night. Getting over a little bit of a cold. I'll be fine. As always, appreciate you guys watching. Subscribe if you're new. Leave a like, and I will see y'all in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like